To go?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the December edition of the SELEP Strategic Board. What I will do is I will just remind, well, first of all, remind everybody that this is being recorded and the recording will appear on our website. And that if you want to ask questions, please do it through the screen rather than on through chat, because we won't be able to record the chat questions. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and ask each person to introduce themselves in the order that you appear on my screen. So you're going to have to pay attention because you won't know which order you're going to be called in. So I'd like to start, if I could, with Councillor Simmons. Rupert, if you could. Yeah,
good morning, colleagues. This is County Councillor Rupert Simmons representing East Sussex County. I'm the lead member for Economy and Strategic Investments.
Great, thank you. Suzanne.
Hello, I'm Suzanne Bennett. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for SELEP.
Thank you. Miles Adcock.
Good morning, Miles Adcock, Chief Executive of Concurrent Technologies PLC based in Colchester and Chair of Success Essex.
Thank you, Miles. Adam Brown.
Thanks, Chris. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining. Adam Bryan, Chief Executive Officer of the LEP.
Okay, thank you. Rodney Chambers, Councillor Chambers.
Rodney Chambers, representing Medway Council.
Thank you, Rodney. Liz Gibney.
Morning, everyone. Liz Gibney. I'm a KMEP representative. I'm also the chair of the Coastal Communities Group for the LEP.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Liz. Carol Ford.
Carol Ford, I'm KMEP representative and also horticultural sector specialist.
Thanks, Carol. David Shepherd.
Hi, I'm David Shepherd, standing in for Anna Christie, who's business representative for East Sussex. I'm also the chair of Business East Sussex, the Growth Hub, the steering group, and vice chairman of Team East Sussex.
Thank you, David. Angela O'Donoghue.
Hello, I'm Angela O'Donoghue. I'm principal of South Essex College and I'm representing FE and Skills.
Thank you, Angela. Graham Peters.
Very much. Okay.
Graham, we have problems with your sound. Okay, it's Graham Peters, and he is the chair of East Sussex. Graham, if you could, I'm not quite sure what to do about your sound, but we're not hearing you. At least I'm not hearing you. Next is Joe James.
Joe James, Chief Executive of the Kent Chamber of Commerce and
Thank you, Joe.
Business Representative.
Thank you, Joe. You're again a little bit faint, but I think you've been experiencing some connectivity issues, so you may have to shout loudly if you wish to ask a question. Sarah Dance.
Hi, I'm Sarah Dance. I'm Deputy Chair of the SELEP and I'm also Chair of Accountability Board, and I'm co-chair of the South East Creative Economy Network.
Thank you, Sarah. Councillor Coxall.
Hello there, I'm Councillor Mark Cogshaw. I am the Cabinet Member for Regeneration and Planning in Thurrock and here today representing the Thurrock Borough Council.
Thank you, Mark. Vice Chancellor Cox, Karen Cox.
Karen Cox, I'm Vice Chancellor, University of Kent and representing higher education.
Thank you, Karen. Councillor Woodley.
Yep, Ron Woodley, Deputy Leader of Southend-on-Sea Borough Council, soon to be a city. And always nice to be on this board.
Thank you, Ron. Claire Lewis.
Claire Lewis, Operations Manager for Vistion, and I'm the Business Rep for Success Essex.
Thank you very much, Claire. Councillor Bartlett.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Trevor Bartlett, leader of Dover District Council, and I'm also lead member for Inward Investment, Culture and Tourism.
Thank you, Trevor. Jeff Miles.
Morning, everybody. I'm Jeff Miles. I'm chair of Kent and Medway Economic Partnership and their Business Advisory Board, and a member of obviously of the SELEP board.
Thank you, Jeff. Matthew Arnold.
Morning, everyone. Matthew Arnold, Commercial Director for Stagecoach South East and KMEP board member.
Thank you, Matthew. Perry Gladding.
Morning. I'm the chair of Opportunity South Essex.
Thank you, Perry. Helen Dyer.
I'm Helen Dyer. I'm Capital Programme Manager at SELEP.
Thank you very much. Councillor Wagland.
Hello, I'm the Cabinet Member at Essex County Council for Infrastructure, Economic Renewal, Infrastructure and Planning, and I'm here for Councillor Kevin Bentley, the leader at Essex.
Thank you, Leslie. Stephanie Mitchener.
Good morning, everybody. Stephanie Mitchener, here representing the Section 151 officer for the accountable body.
Thank you, Stephanie. Clive Soper.
Good morning, Clive Soper, business representative for East Sussex, representing the Federation of Small Businesses, also business champion. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks very much, Clive. Just looking, so I've got Amy Ferraro.
Hi there, I am the governance officer for SELEP.
Thanks, Amy. And Stephanie Ennis.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Ennis. I'm from Essex Legal Services.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. Have I missed anybody off? One thinks they've been called. That's great. Okay. So I thought before we just start, I'd probably just give you an update or lack of update, I should say, more accurately, on what's going on in the LEP review. People will recall that we were expecting, as at the last meeting, we were hoping that there would be something in the comprehensive spending review at the end of October. And at that time, we were told actually we'd have to wait for the Levelling Up white paper, which was due before the end of the calendar year. And then we've heard it confirmed by government in the last week or so that actually the Levelling Up white paper is being delayed until sometime, hopefully early in the new year. So I'm afraid that the state of uncertainty and stasis in the LEP review and the future of levelling up and indeed devolution, etc., has all been delayed, and that continues to cause significant problems for all of us, I guess, in many ways, particularly our local authority colleagues, but also particularly for Adam and the Secretariat team of SELEP, who are doing a fabulous job, but in the face of what is very, very trying circumstances. The LEP network has made a number of representations to ministers, and in fact there is going to be a meeting, I believe, next week with the Secretary of State for Business, is it Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy? I think that's what he calls himself these days. Anyway, Kwasi Kwarteng, and a chair of the LEP network and the CEO of the LEP network. A number of us, including myself, have had meetings with ministers. I had one last week with Helen Whately. I'm sure those of you from Kent will know Helen is the MP for actually my constituency, which is Faversham and Mid Kent. But she's also the Exchequer Secretary to the Treasury. She was. I was actually quite surprised in my meeting with her because, well, I mean, I suppose that's the right word. I mean, she wasn't as close to the situation as I thought that she would be, and she was also not tremendously well informed, I have to say, about what the LEP does, and particularly what we've done in Kent and Medway. I mean, she's obviously aware of what we've done with the medical school, etc. But she was not, and despite us writing to her and giving her lots of information about what we do in Kent and Medway, she wasn't as well informed as I would have hoped. Anyway, I made all the points about the uncertainty and how difficult this has been for us, because this uncertainty has now been going on since February of last year, when it was announced in the budget that there would be a review of LEPs. And I think she was actually, I hope that she appeared to be sympathetic, and she's asked a number of follow-up questions to which I have responded or I'm in the process of responding. Lots of other LEP colleagues have had meetings with ministers and with their local MPs, and in particular, the Secretary of State for Levelling Up and Housing and Communities, Michael Gove, is the MP for Surrey, Mid Surrey, I think, Surrey Heath, and so I know the colleagues from Enterprise M3 have been certainly been talking to him. So government are aware of the difficulties that this continuing period of uncertainty is causing us, and it is clearly disappointing to all of us that a number of promises about when they would make the future clear for LEPs, the first one being before the summer recess, then in September, then in October, then before the end of the year. All these deadlines have been successively missed, and the missing of these deadlines is continuing to cause enormous problems. And the worry is that if it goes on for much longer, that the LEP network will completely degrade and atrophy, and all the really good staff will no longer be around. And I think it's a real credit to our staff that and Adam and his team in particular, under Adam's leadership, are actually are very professionally continuing to work hard in what is very, very difficult circumstances. So that's really all I can say. But I thought I should just let colleagues, I'm sure you all know this, but just in case you don't, that is the latest situation as I see it. So I don't know if there are any questions. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to answer any if there are any questions, but that is really what I know. It doesn't look like there are any questions, so we'll move on then. So I think the next thing really is for me to ask for so just to go through and ask whether or not there are any comments from the minutes of the meeting of the 1st October. Anyone got any comments? Or are people happy for me to sign those as an accurate? I can't see any comments, so I will assume that everyone's happy, content that they are accurate. Are there any declarations of interest on the matters under discussion today? No. Okay.
I think Clive has his hand up.
Oh, excuse me, Clive. Yes, thank you.
Yes, just a quick one. I have revised my declaration of interest form and submitted it, but I have an interest in some land at Holgate, and I am also now a director of Hailsham and District Bid Limited.
Okay, thank you very much, Clive. I mean, just as a reminder to me, just to remind you all that it is really important that you keep the register of interests up to date. I just want to hand over to Adam to report on the written procedures covered by the decision after the quorum was lost at the last meeting. Adam.
Thank you, Chris. Just very briefly, as Chris just mentioned, towards the end of the last strategic board meeting, we lost quorum. So we ran an electronic procedure just to try and achieve those decisions that we were looking for. So just to report two things that were agreed. So firstly, the board endorsed the revised GPF repayment mechanism outlined in the report for the Centre for Advanced Engineering project, which was subject to Accountability Board approval in November, which was subsequently given. And the board endorsed the request to extend the delivery timetable end date for the SELEP Creative Open Workspace Master Plan Prospectus project from July 21 to March 22. So both those things were endorsed. And certainly they were acknowledged and agreed at the Accountability Board as well. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you very much. Thanks very much, Adam. I wanted to take this opportunity to thank a couple of real stalwarts and of SELEP whose last meeting it is. And the first of these is Jeff Miles. Jeff, I think this is your last meeting of the Strategic Board, and I particularly wanted to thank you. You've been absolute. I mean, it's very difficult to describe in words the support and the tower of strength that you've been to SELEP and indeed to KMEP over the course of the last it seems like century. I don't think it was that. I don't think it has been that long, but certainly you've done a most enormous amount of good, Jeff, and you leave huge shoes to fill, someone to fill. And I don't think you knew what you were letting yourself into when you were buttonholed by some Graham Rogers about a century ago to be the chair of the new group called the Kent Economic Board. But you've never turned a blind eye to any issue or failed to support SELEP or indeed Team Kent. We're really grateful for everything that you've done. And no doubt the comedy of working with Jasper Carrott and witnessing the state of hand of Paul Daniels prepared you well for what was to come. But thank you, Jeff. We owe you an enormous debt of gratitude. And I want to place on record how much personally I've really appreciated the huge support you have been to me. And there's never been an occasion where I've not been able to seek your advice, wise counsel, or indeed asked you to do something which you've not done with professionalism and courtesy and skill. So Jeff, thank you so much.
Oh, that's thrown me. I wasn't expecting that. Thank you so much, everybody. Really, I remember chairing the inaugural meeting of SELEP at the House of Lords, and little did we know the rigours that were going to come. But I'm really actually proud of what this group's done. I think public partnership working, this has been an exemplar, and I think people have worked through. And dare I say that the note I read, I think from you, Chris, yesterday about a comment made by Whitehall about the LEPs, I think we should robustly counter that, because I think we've achieved an awful lot, and seeing our local government partners, our higher and education, and all our education partners, the way it's come together, given it was never supposed to work together, I think it's been extraordinary. And I've to say I've enjoyed it, I think that's the truth. I think I have enjoyed it. It's been ups and downs, and I enjoyed my time as chair of the accountability board, and that's primarily because our local democratically elected members are those that took the final decision on our behalf. And I think the system that we worked through over 10 years has been very fair and even, and delivered some great stuff. So I've enjoyed it, and thank you so much to everybody who supported me, and certainly the COMEP team, and Adam and your team. I think you've done extraordinary work, and I'll shut up there, but thank you very much, Chris, for your very kind words. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. The other person whose last meeting it is, we've already remarked on this, is Suzanne. Although Suzanne, of course, still has an accountability board to go, but I've worked very closely with Suzanne over the course of the last 2 or 3 years, and I have to say that I thought that being the vice chair of one of the largest financial services firms in the world during the financial crisis was quite a thing to go through. But actually, what we had to do to convert the LEP from a partnership to a limited company and deal with reducing the number of board members, changing the constitution, was actually very difficult, and on a par, I think, with what I had to do in over 2008, 2013 at UBS. And it could not have been done. It could not have been done without Suzanne. Suzanne's leadership, calmness, cajoling people to do things they didn't want to do, and getting us into shape, where we went from an organisation that government had question marks around our governance simply because of our federated board structure, which is completely different to every other LEP. So it was very difficult for government to put us into a neat pigeonhole. But with Suzanne's guidance and help, which was extraordinary, we would not have been able to achieve that. So Suzanne, you go with our best wishes and really admiration for all that you've achieved, and in really what has been quite tricky, dealing with 35 district councils, 6 upper tiers, 41 MPs, 345,000 small businesses. It's a challenge, and we could not have done it without a really first-class secretariat. And you embody the finest traditions of public service, Suzanne. So again, I want to thank you sincerely, personally, and also on behalf of the board for all that you've done. And we'll miss you. And you should never say people are irreplaceable, but you know what? You are irreplaceable. So you go with our best wishes, and thank you for all you've done.
Thank you so much for your really kind words, Chris. Yeah, that's amazing, and it's been an absolute privilege to work with you and with Sarah and all the board and with the secretariat, and I am going to miss working with everybody terribly. So thank you.
Okay, I think that's all the people, Adam, I think we know who are going to be leaving. Yeah, okay, great. In that case, we'll move on to moving on to a new SELEP model. So I'll hand over to Adam to take us through this.
Thank you very much, Chris. I'll see what I can do to maintain a sort of a positive sort of note over the course of the next 10 or 15 minutes. So thank you. So I won't certainly don't intend to sort of repeat anything of what's in the paper. I want to work on the basis that board members are familiar with it and you've had a read through it. I just wanted to give you a bit more flavour to it, really, and a bit of an indication as to what's in my mind for how we move into 22-23. Excuse me. So Chris has already outlined where we are with government and the white paper. I think, we don't expect to see that until January at the earliest. We are told that it's going to be very clear on LEPs and what government wants to do with LEPs. Although I would also recognise, and I think, some reports that you may have seen this morning indicate that the white paper is going to cover a wide range of topics. It's going to be very broad in what it covers, and I think that the detail, the level of detail is going to be fairly shallow. So any message that we get on the future of the LEPs is going to be helpful, because I think we just need to operate in a bit more clarity than what we've been operating in to date. So, we go into that with with our eyes wide open and able to operate at least for the next year in the way that we want to. There has been an awful lot of coverage and speculation on what's going to be in the white paper vis-a-vis LEPs recently. A lot of that has been rebutted by the LEP network. We're trying our best to keep our heads up, I think, and we've got lots of reasons to do so, which I'll move on to in a second. Just to give you the sort of a few basics on where we're going with the team and potential changes to the board. So the team is the big one here. So the post count in April 22 is going to be 45% lower than the post count in April 21. That's a combination of posts that we won't, of people who have vacated posts that we won't replace, but also redundancies made through the staff consultation, which completed on the 2nd of December. So the impact of that will become obvious over the course of the coming few weeks and months, and certainly will be articulated clearly in the delivery plan for next year, which I'll move on to, and we'll bring to the board in March. But so not appropriate for me to go into more detail, obviously, but just to note that the team will be much reduced next year, and therefore the things that we can do in aggregate will obviously be commensurately reduced as well. Obviously we've got an ongoing risk of flight risk, I guess. So staff looking to secure employment elsewhere that feels more stable. So that's something that, that I'm having to manage. Obviously, we've just heard from Suzanne, who's leaving the team. One of the things that I need to do over the course of the coming few months is really think about those contingencies for when we do lose people, if we do lose further people, and how we sort of make sure that we can, continue our focus on those important items of work. But I can assure you that I'll get my best attention as we move forward. The potential impact on the board. We're having a conversation with federal area lead officers now at the moment about renewal of board directors, because to every extent possible, we want that to be as seamless and as easy as it can be. Obviously, we know that we're doing that somewhat in the dark in terms of what the role of the LEP will be moving forward. And then I suppose there is obviously a chance as well that we have to think about the shape of the board and how we operate if the white paper gives us some, really clear messages that indicate that we need to completely turn on a sixpence in terms of our direction of travel. So it's all a little bit. There are a few question marks around all of that, but I think as soon as we know anything, we'll of course communicate with you. And I think we just need to make sure that we operate as effectively as possible in response to what we see from government. One thing that we're not looking to do this coming year is provide any advice around district co-ops, or at least how district co-ops should relate to our working agenda. So in the past, we said that certain districts would obviously it would make a lot of sense that for particular districts who are aligned with particular agendas, whether that's kind of impact of Brexit in the past or Freeport agenda and things like that, we've kind of made those pieces of advice, I guess, to ensure that we've got as much alignment with our working agenda as possible. We're not going to do that this year because we simply don't know what the direction is going to be. So just to sort of advise board of that, we're not going to sit here and sort of say that, you know, we should have a district co-op representative of a particular area, other than the fact that it's absolutely the turn of an East Sussex district to sit on the board as a co-opted district, because as board members will recognise, over the past 2 years that hasn't been the case. I think both representatives in both years have been from, we've had one from Kent and one from Essex, so that'll be something that's obviously recorded in the paper, but that's something that we want to make sure is in place for this next year. Trying to sort of strike a positive tone with it, and I think there are lots of positives that we can focus on. I mean, what we've done is almost, to some extent, you could sort of say that we've taken our medicine already. You know, we've made the moves to put the organisation on a financial footing that is known. You know, we know that we've got enough funding already to be able to support a reduced team through the whole of the 22-23 financial year. So effectively, we know that we'll be here, and we know that we'll be here to do a job, which is important. It's important for the staff to know that as well, and that we can hopefully, you know, continue to add value to everything else that other partners do. So for me, there's an opportunity there for us to capitalise on the networks that we have, capitalise on the relationships that we've built over those years, and use the expertise that we've developed to also to help you, to help economic growth in the area. You know, whatever that looks like. You know, this isn't political. This is about people and expertise, and you knowing that expertise is there, and it's there to help all of you around the board table to make sure that this area of the country is as strong economically as it can possibly be. So that's really a key message for me, really, to recognise that, you know, ignoring the kind of the white paper and the sort of organisational changes that might be coming down the track, ignoring that anything that else that might kind of govern the frameworks that we work within. We've just got a body of really good people there who can do a really good job, and I'll just appeal to board members just to be mindful of that when projects and other things are being developed. You know, don't forget us, just get us involved, because we're there as a resource to help, and that's important to know. There are particular things that we'll put some focus on. So the major projects group that we instituted last year has been really successful. That the folks from those big infrastructure projects that are involved, whether that's Bradwell or Lower Thames Crossing or the Golden Communities or Public Health England, all of those people are really keen to sort of engage in that conversation around future skills requirements, around supply chains, around all of those things that really, we're really a sort of an overall look, a regional understanding, you know, that grasp on data are really important, and where an organisation on its own might not do it. And I failed to mention London Resort there as well, who are an important part of that conversation. So that's been really successful. We want to continue doing that because there's a real interest from those bodies to sort of stay convened together in that group with our support. So that's something that we'll do. And building on that, you know, our approach to supporting groups, to supporting, you know, the working groups as we've had in the past will change a bit, but I don't think it's going to be any the worse. I think it'll just be more strategic. So what we won't necessarily be resourced to do is to administer all of those meetings, to sort of sit in all of them and provide the minutes and what have you. But certainly, you know, we've got people there who can continue to make the links, continue to sort of push that collaboration, you know, link people together, convene conversations that are helpful, and really do those things that will, you know, take projects onto the next level. So that I expect we'll absolutely be able to do. There's also a piece for me around our legacy. You know, if this is going to be the final year of the LEP, then, you know, it's very easy to sort of produce the odd table now and again to say here's a long list of projects that we've supported that have been delivered over the area. But actually, I think there's probably, if we can do it, there's probably a more sophisticated way, if you like, of documenting our legacy, whether we do it digitally or whether we do it, we have a printed document or something. Wouldn't it be fantastic for everybody involved in the LEP, whether that's us as officers or all of you as board members, to have something that says, look at all these things that we've done. Look at what SELEP and all of its partners have delivered over the course of the last 10 years. I think if we do get to that point in March 23 where it's the end, then what a fantastic thing to have and look back on and say, these are the things that we've done, these are the lessons that we've learned, and really to use that to inform what comes next. So that's something that I absolutely want to do, because I think that celebrating what we've done, shouting loudly about what we've done, is something that we've never been that good at, because we've never put the time to it. We've never been able to resource it. What a time to do it. And we absolutely should do it now. There's also something else about supporting the transition to whatever's next. So, the white paper is not going to be silent on what local growth looks like moving forward. And I've already said how much, we should work to support partners, and we're there to support you. But I think if there's something also specific that we're going to move to in this arena, then this LEP and every other LEP actually should really be there as agents to try and make sure that transition happens, if there is a transition at all. So we should be there to support that. And I think when you look at some of the commentary and some of the things that say Michael Gove has said about wanting to make sure that decisions around local growth are rooted in accountable politicians. I can't remember the exact word he used. What a fantastic model we've had for ensuring that you get business leadership through the strategic board, and then you get you have it supported by the accountability board mechanism, by local authority leaders who are able to rubber stamp the decisions that have been made by businesses in the first place. Not many LEPs operate in that way, and it's a great credit to us that we've done that. And I think there's a lot to be learned in other places for that model, and maybe that's something that could feature in those conversations. A lot of the detail will follow in the delivery plan. When we know a bit more from the white paper, whether that lands in January 2022 or January 2032, certainly we'll be able to produce a delivery plan that puts meat on the bones of everything I've just described. But really the message for me is there's a lot of good stuff that we can do next year. As a team, we absolutely will do it. Keep working with us, recognise the expertise that's there. It's the people in the team that can make a difference. And I'll make sure that we're positioned in the best possible way to support you as board members, but most importantly of all, to make sure that we're here to support the advancement of the economy across the area.
Thank you very much, Adam. Are there any questions for Adam? Can't see any.
There's one from Joe, I think.
Okay, Joe.
Hopefully you can hear me. I'll try and talk louder.
Yep.
It's not really a question. It is just a comment really for Adam. You mentioned about the team being here to support us as board directors, which is very much appreciated. But I just want to say that does work both ways. Appreciating that you've got a much reduced team, but still a lot of work to do going forward. Please do call on us as directors if you need any support from us.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you. Anybody else? If there are no other questions or comments, what I'm going to ask you to do is if you can agree the proposals in the paper about moving to the new model, and also if I could encourage the partner organisations to make nominations for directors, etc. Now is the time to do that. Everyone happy with the paper? And we're not happy because we're in a difficult situation, but it's the best we can do. Looks like we've got consent. Great.
Agreed.
Okay. In that case, let's move on then to the local assurance framework and policy updates. Suzanne.
Thank you, Chair. So the National Assurance Framework, which is issued by the Department of Levelling Up Housing and Communities, DLUC, I think we're calling them, they issued an update late this summer that we weren't expecting. Our local assurance framework needs to meet the National Assurance Framework as a minimum. When the changes came out, I'm pleased to say that actually a lot of the changes we were already had in place, because we were actually operating slightly above, or actually in some cases well above, what's required nationally. So, for example, we already work with the accountable body discussing risks, and that's a change. And the Section 151 officer and her staff have the opportunity to discuss decisions ahead of what happens. So most of the changes were already there. There were some fairly minimal and immaterial changes that needed to be put into our local assurance framework. There's a clarification on when the requirement around equal gender representation needs to be implemented, and that's the beginning of calendar year 2023. There is a requirement to have a separate expenses policy and hospitality policy. We previously had an expenses and hospitality policy in one. So there's some fairly immaterial changes that we're suggesting. We need to put these in to make sure that we do comply with the National Assurance Framework. We've made one change ourselves where we've tweaked the terms for board members. We've added a word up to in there to allow appointments up to 2 years. Previously, we could only have appointments, the minimum was 2 years, but given the circumstances that we're in at the moment, we thought it'd be useful to give ourselves a little bit of flexibility there. We have consulted with Accountability Board on these changes. That's a requirement. We have a framework agreement that governs the relationship between this board and Accountability Board and the roles and responsibilities. And one of the requirements of that framework agreement is that changes to the local assurance framework are consulted with Accountability Board members first. We consulted with them in November, and Accountability Board members were happy with these changes. So therefore, I recommend that we make these changes. We also then need to adopt the new expenses policy and the new hospitality policy. There are no changes to these policies. There's just 2 separate policies to allow us to tick that particular box. The only other thing under this paper is, as we've mentioned at the previous meeting, DLUC have issued exemptions to some parts of the National Assurance Framework, given the current extraordinary circumstances that we find ourselves in. One of those is that private board members do not need to go through open recruitment for appointments that are made up to the 31st of March 2022, this financial year. And we recommend that that be put in place for our federated board members as well. So just for a very short period of time, whilst we're in these very strange times, we think that exemption should be afforded. And I think we should give further consideration to that once the white paper is published, when that might be. Are there any questions on these changes?
Any questions for Suzanne on these? I think they're mainly administrative.
They are.
Yeah.
There's nothing that fundamentally changes the way.
And we are required to put them in place.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So if there are no questions, what I'm going to ask you to do is agree the updated local assurance framework. Can I have your agreement to that, please? Thank you. Agree the new expenses policy. Okay, thank you. To agree the new hospitality policy.
Agreed.
Thank you. To agree the updated recruitment policy.
Agreed.
And to agree the exemptions to policy regarding the appointment of private directors. These exemptions are in place for appointments made before 31st March 22.
Yeah, agreed.
Agreed.
Okay, on that topic, we're now on to board succession planning. I am going to, I think, be put in the waiting room, and I'm going to ask Suzanne to take us through it, and Sarah Dance will chair this element. So if I could be put in the waiting room, please.
Yeah, just bear with us 2 seconds and we'll. Yeah, okay. So I think Chris has left. So Sarah, I will just briefly run through what's in the paper, then hand over to you. Yep. So board members will remember at our last board meeting, you made quite clear that you'd really like Chris and Sarah to extend for another term to lead the board. Both Chris and Sarah have very kindly agreed to extend for a period of 12 months. Just to run through the requirements of the governance on this. So the National Assurance Framework allows chairs and deputy chairs to serve 3 terms of 3 years, so a total of 9 years. Sarah's just served the 2 terms, so there's no issues there. Chris has served 3 terms, but of 2 years, so that's a total of 6 years. So we are okay within that quantum, and there's also an exemption that has been issued on this one, as I mentioned under the previous item. Our local assurance framework does limit chair and deputy chair terms to 6 years. But again, given the extraordinary circumstance in which we find ourselves, we think that there is a compelling reason to act outside of that. And we've confirmed that with our legal team, and they're happy that this does present an extraordinary reason for acting outside of our general policy. The Articles of Association only pertain to the service that was accrued since the company has been incorporated, which was 2 years ago at the end of February. And so we're able to, on that basis, both the chair and the deputy chair have served the 2-year term. So we can extend, but we do need to go to special resolution of SELEP Limited members. So that's the federated board members that have chosen to become SELEP Limited members. And we will run that special resolution electronically through January if a decision's made today. So governance-wise, we are able to extend the terms of both Chris and Sarah, should board members be so minded.
Thanks, Suzanne. So just for the purposes of this discussion, because just to be clear, can we just discuss Chris and then I will leave and then you can discuss my appointment. So just clarity. So do we have any questions or comments on the potential appointment of Chris? Are they old hands, Graham and Rupert? Are they old hands?
It's a new one,
New hand.
Sarah.
Thank you. Councillor Simmons.
Thank you very much, Sarah. I think it is of absolute importance that we have continuity until we see the resolution of the Levelling Up White Paper. So it would be of immense value for yourself and Chris to continue in your roles, as you have so kindly agreed to do so, because that will allow our structure to be maintained and indeed to give some confidence to our staff who are having to act quite heroically in the current circumstances.
Thank you, Councillor Simmons. Graham, is that a hand up as well? I can't hear you, I'm afraid. Sorry, we have the same issue we've had previously sometimes with you, Graham, that we can't hear you. Councillor Woodley.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I've just agree with Rupert. It's a no-brainer. We should absolutely go ahead with this. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, Graham, do you want to try one more time? No. Okay. So unless there are any other questions or comments, I ask the board whether we agree that Christian Brady should be appointed as chair of, oh, sorry, I've just seen another 2 hands go up. Sorry, Jeff and Claire. Oh no, they're not hands, they're voting hands already. Before I've even finished, good. Agree that Christian Brady should be appointed as chair of SELEP Limited for the period of 1st of March 2022 to the 28th of February 2023, pending a special resolution of the membership of SELEP Limited. Do people agree? Okay, thank you very much. Now I'm going to be taken to a waiting room and you've got Chris back in. Thank you.
Okay, so if you just bear with us 2 seconds and we will virtually escort Sarah off the premises and bring Chris back in.
Okay, great.
Hello, Chris.
So I can only see you. Why? I need to go to view. 1 sec. Gallery, got it.
Okay, you're good. You're back. Yep, Sarah's in the waiting room. So
okay, great. So in that case, Sarah, can you take us through the deputy? Councillor Wagland. Oh, she had a hand up.
Yep.
Yeah,
so
take the Deputy Chair situation.
Yep. So again, as before, Sarah has kindly offered to extend for a period of 12 months. Sarah's only previously served 1 2-year term, so there are no issues around the governance. We do need to go, for any extension, needs to go through a special resolution of the SELEP limited membership. And yeah, the appointment will be on the same basis as currently, with a payment of allowance of £10,000 per annum.
Okay, can I have people's approval to reappoint Sarah as Deputy Chair for a period of 1 year from the 1st of April, I guess, is it 1st April 2022?
It's actually from the 1st of March because it aligns with when the company was incorporated.
1st March, thank you for that clarification. 1st March 2022. I think
Agreed.
That's passed, thank you very much. So we should get Sarah back in and then you can summarise, Suzanne, where we've got to.
Okay, just give Sarah a second to reconnect. So people come in a slightly different place. So
I'm here.
You're here, lovely, brilliant. Thank you, Chair and Deputy Chair. And I'm really pleased to say that both of those decisions passed. And just from the Secretariat's point of view, we really do appreciate you both extending for a further year. So you're both pending the special resolution of SELEP Limited membership, which will run through January, be appointed as Chair and Deputy Chair from the 1st of March 2022 through 28th of February 2023 on the same basis and with the same allowances as current.
Okay, thank you very much for your endorsement. Speaking for myself, thank you for the endorsement. And certainly I will continue, and I'll let Sarah speak for herself. I'll continue just in the same way that I've done before, if that's satisfactory. Sarah, yeah.
Yeah, just to say thank you to as well. It has been really great to work with you all, and I'm absolutely determined to continue to support the Secretariat through all of their amazing work. Thank you.
Great. Okay, thank you. So we heard, I believe, from Transport South East at the last board, and we thought we should take the opportunity of hearing from Transport East at this board. So I believe the part of SELEP which is covered by Transport East is Essex and Thurrock and Southend, whereas Transport for the South East was Kent and Medway and East Sussex. So with those opening remarks, I'm going to hand over to Perry, who is our representative on the Transport East board, I believe. Perry, over to you.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Can I just check Esme's on the call from Transport East before I get going? She is brilliant. Okay, look, thanks everybody. Let me just give a brief introduction to what Esme's going to cover. Transport East has commenced consultation on its proposed strategy. There's some great work that's been carried out under the lead of Andrew Summers and the chair of Councillor Kevin Bentley. The government and other partners, the strategy is to support councils, the government and other parties in identifying the schemes and funding needed to support sustainable economic growth in the region and improve people's quality of life. This is covering Norfolk, Suffolk, Essex, Southend-on-Sea and Thurrock. The strategy sets a series of priorities for better transport for everybody living, working and learning in the region up to 2050. The draft transport strategy sets out an ambitious direction for transport investment to tackle the unique challenges and opportunities of the region. The East has some of the faster growing towns and cities, in brackets ROM, in the UK, with a predicted population increase of up to 500,000 by 2041. We have a nationally significant industries in the region, including agricultural, clean energy, freight and logistics, and a very strong visitor economy. Transport East is also consulting on a draft investment and delivery programme. This sets out the immediate priorities and a framework for accelerating new ideas through the development and funding process so they get delivered faster. There are 55 different projects within the IDP, ranging from schemes in delivery to those at the idea phase. Some are for particular areas, and others look to make changes across the whole region. And just making a point here that the region of SELEP is significant for the whole of the UK. Transport East has worked closely with SELEP and our local transport authorities to develop the transport strategy. And we would particularly like to thank Howard Davis for his expert input into our senior officers group and the lead officers for the local authorities. Transport East also works closely with Transport for the South East, which we've heard before, and the Strategic Transport Board covering the rest of the SELEP region, and are well engaged with Transport for London. So I'm pleased to hand over to Esme Yall, who is the communications lead for this particular project, who's going to take you through it. And Councillor Leslie Wagland will say a few closing words after she's finished. So over to you, Esme.
Thank you very much, Perry, and thank you to SELEP for inviting us to speak at this session. I'm about to share my screen for a short presentation to take you through how we've developed the transport strategy and the broad contents of that. And then I'm happy to take any questions following that. Give me a second. Where's it gone? Can you see that in slideshow format?
Yep.
Perfect. So yeah, I'm going to give you a bit of background, take you through the transport strategy, and then let you know what our approach is to consultation and how you can get involved with submitting formal to that. So given a bit of background on Transport East there from Perry on terms of what area of the region that we cover and what our broad role is. We are a partnership body. We've been highly collaborative, set up in 2018 in collaboration between Kevin Bentley and Nicola Beach of Suffolk Council. But the political forum that many of the members here are sat on has been a really unique way of bringing the region together in setting a clear agenda for the improvement of transport across the region, recognising its role in economic growth, recognising its essential nature for improving the quality of life across a range of metrics. We're partly funded by the partners across the region, but also our work programme has been funded partly by the DFT, and the DFT are our home government department. Baroness Veer is the Minister for Buses, Regions, Buses and Places, and is our minister that we report into as well. And they've set us a very clear agenda of developing this transport strategy for the region and then maintaining a pipeline of prioritised projects to guide on investment from a government perspective over the course of the next 30 years. So we need to take into account national and regional outcomes, build from a robust evidence base and be informed by engagement with local authorities and those partners across the region, including operators, ports and the public too. The purpose of us and our strategy is to set that single voice for better transport in the East, building that strategic case for investment, setting those strategic priorities and developing an integrated approach to transport planning and delivery. The local transport authorities do an excellent job in prioritising and developing plans for their specific areas, but government and the region itself has recognised that there's a real merit in coming together, and the LEPs have done a lot of that work historically to develop the joint collaborative approach and looking at things from a more regional perspective. This is quickly just where we've got to in terms of the strategy timeline. So we started working on the transport strategy around 12 months ago, just over 12 months ago, starting to build that technical evidence base and setting off with strong public and partner engagement process in support of that, to test our assumptions, to test the evidence that is emerging, and to make sure that we iteratively we're improving our understanding of the priorities and opportunities and the challenges within the region. Over the summer, autumn, we started to develop that strategic approach for the strategy and started testing that with partners and authorities. And then over the last couple of months, we've been drafting that into the final draft transport strategy for public consultation. We launched that last week and we've had a good level of response so far, but that's running to the 30th of January, and I'll take you through that in a little bit more detail later on in the presentation. Once we've got those comments in and reviewed them and refined the strategy, we'll take that through the Transport East Forum for formal endorsement before going out to the local transport authorities for their endorsement, and then sending on up to the DFT for them to review and start to take into formal consideration in terms of the planning and outcomes that they're prioritising for the region. So just to take you through the process to date, which I've mentioned a little bit, but initially the first stage that we looked at was understanding transport in the East, developing a strong baseline in terms of the technical evidence around what's there and what the challenges are. But we also undertook some deep dives into kind of 3 core areas, including transport's role in economic growth, how we can support rural and coastal areas more effectively, and also a deep dive into ports and the challenges that they're facing in terms of transport resilience and connectivity. That all got fed into the analysis of the vision and strategy, which set our strategic priorities and then developed a delivery pathway for each of those priorities, which I'll go through shortly. Alongside that, we've been looking to improve the delivery planning of transport in the region. So we've got an improved investment framework and a set of metrics to test against there. And then also refining the investment pipeline that we did an interim version of in 2020, published an interim version earlier this year. Throughout that, we've undertaken a substantial amount of engagement to make sure that we're developing that single voice for the region and that we're capturing everybody's aspirations and issues accurately. So I've mentioned previously that the forum and the senior officers group, they were very deeply involved in steering the work that we've been doing and advising us on the direction of travel that we ought to be taking. We undertook 15 workshops. We held our transport summit, which also included further workshops. We ran a public survey, which got around 600 responses this time last year. We've met MPs through a specific roundtable, but also through the East of England APPG. Perry kindly assisted us to really understand the challenges around the ports and their aspirations through a ports roundtable. And then, throughout the year, we're a small team. There's currently kind of 4 of us as permanent members of Transport East, but we've had hundreds of meetings with people across the region to listen, understand, refine, and make sure that we're developing something that really meets the requirements of the East. So yes, thank you very much for all of your support, and particularly I'd like to name check Perry, Ron, Mark, Leslie and Graham Buckland as well for their expertise and guidance that they've been able to provide us over the last 12 months. Start with a full review of local, national and regional strategies to make sure that we were aligning at all levels. Obviously, there's been quite a lot of change of approach coming out of government over the last 12 months, and we worked hard to make sure that we were in capturing all of that as it was coming forward with things like the transport decarbonisation plan, gear change, bus strategy, and then also understanding the interfaces with the new departments such as DLUC and revisions to BEIS's approach as well. So from a SELEP perspective, we've reviewed your economic growth strategies and other strategic documents, and hopefully you can see your aspirations reflected in our regional wider outcomes that we believe that the transport strategy is aiming to deliver. I'll just leave them on screen for a second. So the core feedback that we've had throughout this process is that the East is essential for the UK economy. And as Perry mentioned, you know, the SELEP region that we cross over with is particularly important to that. We have a strong role in, you know, with an innovative and diverse economy. We are an essential gateway, global gateway for international trade. 50% of the UK's containerised goods come through the ports for Felixstowe, Harwich and on the Thames. We have a huge role in the energy sector, the clean energy sector powering the country, and we're expected to be taking on major housing and jobs growth over the next 30 years as well. And we've already got existing challenges. So, you know, poor air quality and carbon emissions, that's sitting at 42% of carbon dioxide emissions in the region. It comes from transport, the largest sector. There's poor connectivity between, we have 75 towns and cities and no central urban hub that, you know, draws people in a radial way. We work on a network of connections, and that's what makes the economy of the region thrive, but gives some real challenges in trying to manage that transport demand. We have large rural and coastal areas, and the accessibility to shops, services, education, skills, training from those can be a real challenge. So we've got some real transport deserts where, you know, it's nigh on impossible to get to your nearest centre within an hour by sustainable transport means. And then also those challenges around accessing those international gateways, the reliability issue for our ports and distribution networks is really important and adds on cost to customers at the end of the day as well. So this led us to an overarching vision and a set of 4 strategic priorities. So a thriving economy for the East with fast, reliable, safe and resilient transport infrastructure, driving forward a future of inclusive and sustainable growth for decades to come. And those 4 strategic priorities have been refined through those conversations. So one of the core priorities is that decarbonisation to net zero, and we're setting an ambitious target of aiming for 2040 for that. Very challenging, but our view is that if you don't set the ambition, then you're not going to, you know, you've got no hope of meeting it in you know, a reasonable time frame. Connecting our growing towns and cities, as we mentioned, energising those coastal and rural communities, and unlocking those international gateways. So for each of those priorities, we've set a pathway to deliver with a number of goals within each one. And each goal has a set of activities that Transport East has committed to undertaking to progress against these goals. And these activities reflect our role as a sub-national level transport planning and you know, guiding body. Much of these activities that we've set in each of these goals cross over, because by the nature of transport, you don't achieve, you know, very few transport interventions achieve just one outcome. And kind of sitting above all this to try and drive that forward is, you know, one of our core ambitions is to improve the analytical and data capability within the region to help build those business cases more effectively and get those projects moving faster. So decarbonisation to net zero follows broadly the Royal Transport Planning Institute's framework of first, you know, zero carbon growth, building things close to, you know, existing sustainable transport, recognising that's only one of the outcomes that is needed for local planning authorities to measure against, but is important to, you know, reduce the frequency of car journeys, particularly reducing the demand for those carbon intensive trips by bringing things closer, including digital connectivity, shifting modes to more sustainable options, and then also switching fuels to greener fuels as well. With connecting growing towns and cities, you know, our core areas are around enhancing sustainable transport with, and that's both within towns and cities, but also between towns and cities, that faster and more reliable transport connections, and then looking at a more customer facing user user-based way of integrating transport with each other, making sure that you can get from your house to your final destination by a sustainable route all the way through, and making that easy to plan and easy to pay for as well. So some of the areas that we're looking at to deliver against this is some strategic connectivity analysis and some core corridor studies to assess where we're best able to improve those connections across our core movement corridors. We've identified 6 of those across the region. We've established formal mechanisms already with Network Rail and National Highways to really start getting in at the early stages of their planning processes and their strategic analysis processes, to make sure that our priorities are interweaved into their plans and delivery programs. And then we've also established active travel and passenger transport subgroups to maximise the sustainable connections within towns and cities. And we'll be setting a programme of work with them early next year for the next financial year as well. On energising rural and coastal communities, that increasing access to education, training services and employment for rural communities is crucial. We see a lot of brain drain from the region, and I think part of that is around that needing to move somewhere in order to be able to progress your career and access those skills and training that you need as well. And then also improving the connectivity along our coastline. So by their nature, coastal communities weren't necessarily well linked by road. They were well linked by river and sea. And they're on the edge of the country. And that creates real challenges connecting with onward journeys, particularly into London and onwards to the Midlands and the North as well. And some of our core employment sectors and economic sectors are coastal based. So two of the things that we're progressing from that is we've set ourselves up as the lead subnational transport body for England on rural mobility, and are wanting to develop that into a rural centre of excellence for transport mobility. And then also we're committing to exploring the enhancement of onward coastal connections as well, particularly not necessarily by road, but seeing what more can be achieved by river and sea as well. This links into the pathway for unlocking international gateways for ports particularly. So along that it's better access to those ports, more reliable connections, more reliable journey times, making that shift. So freight equates to around half of our transport carbon emissions, and is a real challenge for the region to progress decarbonisation on freight. Within the DfT's transport decarbonisation plan, they see the technology is obviously only just emerging, and it's going to take a while for that to move through the industry and be the norm for large vehicles. How we can help the region really progress that and be at the forefront of the innovations in that sphere would really benefit our communities as well. So we're committing to develop a future of freight plan for the east of England over the next 12 to 18 months, and then also exploring more with Network Rail about how we can move further freight onto rail and make a real step change on that as well. And then the final pathway is unlocking international gateways and airports, and some of the challenges that airports and ports have are quite similar, but some are very different, and particularly around the passenger demand aspect for airports, that's an area of real difference. We've got 3 international airports in the region, and obviously Stansted and Southend within the SELEP area are 2 large passenger airports. They've got some of the better connectivity in comparison to Norwich in the north from sustainable means, and I know that Stansted particularly has worked hard to improve the sustainable connections to the airport, but the focus tends to be on the south and east, and we're wanting to see how far we can expand that beyond those existing connections into London. Also to try and expand the economic employment area for both Stansted and Southend to really benefit our region, rather than necessarily drawing employees in from from the London, peripheral London area. So we're also working hard, to support the net zero aviation emissions, recognising that sits more with the operators and central government, but how we can support from a surface access perspective and around shifting modes. As I mentioned, we've identified 6 strategic corridors across the region, and 4 of those interface, with the SELEP region, particularly the South Essex corridor and the Stansted, Braintree, Colchester, Harwich, Clacton, and then the corridor running northeast along the coast as well, with the A12 and the Great Eastern Main Line too. So, and of course the Wemmel one running up through Harlow and up towards Cambridge through the UK Innovation Corridor linkage as well. So those are the core movement corridors for both people and goods, and will be a focus of our attention in certainly the shorter term to understand how we can progress sustainable transport improvements across those. As Perry mentioned earlier, to the transport strategy, we've got a draft investment and delivery programme also out for consultation, which is that revised framework for progressing and prioritising and accelerating schemes to align with the transport priorities that are set out in the strategy. That sets out 55 projects and packages, which are grouped into kind of 3 main categories. Some of those are already in delivery, some are already in development by local transport authorities and other partners, and some are either ideas that have come out of the discussions that we've had to date, or again through local authority partners. And the idea is that these align more with DFT appraisal processes, but also those of the delivery bodies. And what we'll be doing here is looking to see what Transport East can do to enhance those business cases, to champion those through the decision-making processes and get them moving faster, the funding coming faster, and work starting on the ground faster. And linked to this is, some of these areas from our better delivery engagement that we've undertaken as part of this as well. So, as I mentioned, that capacity and capability within the region for regional transport intelligence and building business cases, the data and analysis that underpins that, strengthening that single voice through local political influence, drawing parties together to be able to make the case more effectively, looking more at people and what the journeys that people want to do, and that comes partly with that analysis capability. We've been advocating all the way through the recent CSR process, along with partners, on that simpler, longer term funding, particularly for local transport authorities, trying to reduce the number of pots that people are having to bid into. That takes up resource with no guarantee of funding outcome, and often leads to conflicting delivery rather than a holistic and integrated approach to transport delivery. We're working closely with all of our partners, with DFT, National Highways, Network Rail, our partner STBs, not just Transport for the South East, but also England's Economic Heartland, who cover Hertfordshire, and the other 4 across the region as well, to make the case for increased transport investment across the board. And then, so some of those projects that have been coming forward from the SELEP region that we've got identified in our pipeline so far are things like the A12 and A120 improvements, A13 and A127 as well, Army and Navy that's already been progressed, and some of those improvements to the Great Eastern Main Line that's been identified already. Same with Essex Thameside and West Anglia Main Line. Looking to the future, that Essex has been really forward thinking, along with Southend and Thurrock, around potentials for rapid transit projects. So, we've got those coming forward for Herts and Essex, North Essex, South Essex and Southend, and also the Kennex connection as well. Linked to that, we're working with Thurrock to help maximise the benefits of the Lower Thames crossing to our region, rather than it just being such a strategic connection for National Highways benefits. and we've got some meetings lined up for early next year to see how that can link into more sustainable transport issues as well. And then also things like extending some of the innovative solutions that Essex has been coming forward with on rural connectivity, such as the bookable minibus services, the digital demand responsive transport that operate in North Essex and on the Dengie Peninsula. And as I mentioned, things like, really pushing forward with active travel across the region, really pushing forward with the support for the bus service improvement plans and enhanced partnerships that local authorities are developing, and working with ports and others around improving the connections for them as well, particularly around the free ports and as their plans develop, what the implications are going to be on the transport network from growth in those areas, and the onward connections of those in terms of distribution and logistics needs. So this is all out for consultation currently. As I said, we launched on the 2nd of December last week. The consultation covers those 2 core documents, but also our integrated sustainability appraisal, which has assessed the strategy against core economic, social and environmental objectives. It's digitally led. We're a large region, and also with the COVID challenges, we wanted to make sure that it was resilient. So we've got this virtual exhibition space you can see on the slide that's available 24/7 for people to explore. We've got a video animation that we're sharing on social media, so do take a look at our Twitter and LinkedIn pages and share that onwards. That distills the strategy into either 2 minutes or 4 minutes, depending on how detailed you want to get. We're running 2 online Q&A webinars to take people through this presentation, but then also take any questions, and the focus will be on understanding the level of support and identify any areas of improvement for change. So we really welcome that critical challenge. We've heard a lot from SELEP and the partners over the last sort of 12 months around what's required, but if there's anything in there that you think isn't quite aligning with your core ambitions, then please do let us know and we can look to refine it. The consultation closes on the 30th of Jan, but we recognise that over Christmas period it can be a bit challenging to do detailed responses. So if you need a few extra days to be able to put something together that is of the quality that you'd want to get across to us, do let me know.
Thank you very much, Esme. I think Councillor Wagland, before we go into questions, Councillor Wagland, did you want to make a few remarks, observations?
I'd love to, yes. Thank you very much indeed, Chair. This may be a small team, Esme, but it's, I think, small and perfectly formed, if I may say so. Particular credit goes to Andrew Summers and to Esme, who have, apart from anything else, had to put up with my views on the subject, and no doubt Graham's as well. So if you can cope with that, you can cope with anything, it strikes me. But importantly, I think this document, again, as Esme said, it's one in which we can see our aspirations for the Eastern region, and for me, they really amount to 2 words: just connect. Our populations, our businesses, our constructive friends, as in this Zoom call, will do the rest. But the connection is where we've got to be. And to get there, you have to understand the Eastern region, including, for this purpose, the Southeast, and how we all bolt together. For me, the plan has some amazing qualities that I think I haven't really ever seen in quite this form before. First, it's simple and straightforward, and all of us know just how difficult that is to do, so congrats for that. The second is it's sensible, it's credible, it has a lot of really practical stuff. You can see that from the way in which it dives from issues relating to major strategic rail and east-west and other considerations that we've battled for years, through into minibuses. And I can hear 1 or 2 of my residents going, oh yeah, but if you read the document, it really does. And I love the shorter versions as well, Esme, which I think still managed to retain the essence of that. And the third S for me on this is that it's saleable. And I know that sounds hard stuff, but it's really necessary, because we've got to get investment for this. We've got to be aligned. we've got to carry with us rural and coastal, and your very well made point about 75 centres without anything in the core that we can latch onto as a particular conurbation, and the risk, of course, of being sucked into the conurbation considerations of London. For me, this is all about future-proofing the Eastern region for generations to come. And therefore, for me, it's also absolutely essential. The East is the great undeveloped part of the quadrants around London. For me, I spend my life as someone who's worked in London for a large part of it, explaining to people what the East actually means. I might just now pass this over to them because most of what I would like to say is in there. But I think the important thing about it is that its role is poorly understood. So the piece of this work that actually articulates that is really, really significant. I know Councillor Bentley would want me to say, as someone who was one of the founding fathers of Transport East and is constantly proud of where it gets to, that it's beautifully aligned on sustainability. That's going to be really critical. And although transport always talks about the hard stuff, and Esme knows I'm always the person going, hang on a minute, there's some real people in all of this. One of the things that has most frightened me, I think, possibly because my background is law and planning, is the fact that we now have the first coroner's decision that a small child lost her life to air quality. That was the cause of death. That should make all of us really sit up and think seriously. So this plan is definitively sustainable on those issues, and it also understands about deprivation and where connection fits in on that, and that's really important for Essex, with areas that are deprived to a point that none of us should be prepared to tolerate a 19-year gap in life expectancy between parts of a region. That just isn't where any of us came into our particular roles to sit on. And finally, for me, but that's probably my background, it's evidence-based. I love the fact that we've got the data. You can find it in this document. And if you can't find it in the document, you can certainly get it from Andrew and Esme. And that means that it gives us a platform for everything, including the particular aspect of investment, but it also makes it more deliverable in my book and more, again, communicable. So all those things really important. This for me is a plea for the Eastern region. It's a plea I've made for many, many years because I married into Essex, as I've said on some occasions. I started off in Kent. I understand the people from both regions, I like to think. And for me, this is about making common cause. This call is a plea to the South East and the East to join forces on this, not to just be statutory consultees to each other. We are constructive friends. And for that, I would love you all to contribute, and I would love you to communicate with any of those of us involved, including me, because it's always great to hear the views of constructive friends. So thank you very much for that opportunity. And I look forward to hearing comments from the floor on the debate.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wagland. I've got some questions, first from Joe James and then from Matthew Arnold. So Joe, over to you, and then to Matthew after Joe.
Yeah, mine's not really a question. I just wanted to say thank you to Esme for what was really a really detailed presentation. And just to say, actually, I was quite impressed with the 15 goals under the 5 headings. I think they appear very well thought through and interconnected, and actually just what's needed. And it's nice to see your digital approach to consultation, particularly the exhibition board. And I was going to say, but Leslie's already said it, but I'll reiterate it. It does appear to be sensible and credible. So yeah, well done.
Thank you very much, Joe. Matthew.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you, Esme. That was a really succinct presentation, really interesting. Although I'm sitting here with a Kent Federated Board hat on, I did spend 12 years working on public transport in Essex, principally in South Essex, but latterly in the Colchester area as well. So it's great to see that there's some movement there. One of the things that I'm really struggling with my other hat on is rural transport. So it's great to see that you're focusing on that. There are huge swathes of the eastern area, particularly rural Suffolk and Norfolk, where connectivity is very, very difficult, but you're alive for that. And we're in a situation nationally where we've got the national bus strategy, which you referred to, and of course rail is kind of being turned upside down at the moment. So there's all of that going on. It's really important to capture to capture both those initiatives and to have a credible plan, which you obviously have got. Just one last point though is that when we talk about air quality, some of the metropolitan regions around the UK are tackling air quality by simply targeting heavy vehicles that are actually responsible for an awful lot less emissions than you might think. Of course, politically, the difficult thing to do is to deal with unchecked car use. And I would just urge you that when looking at mitigations for emissions, that you don't ignore the private car, because that can be a really big win and very quickly. But it's a really great piece of work. Really good to see, and thank you very much for presenting it.
Thank you, Matthew, for those. If there are no other questions or observations, what I'd like to do is to move on to get your agreement that the board should make a formal response to the Transport East strategy consultation. Can I have your agreement to that?
Chair, I think Ron was waving.
Oh, sorry, excuse me, Ron. Yep, we'll get there, Ron. Yeah.
No, that's all right. I'm often ignored, so I'll get used to it.
Never deliberately, Ron. Not by Leslie.
Not by Leslie. No, hopefully the board would agree the recommendations in here. I know that the Southend officers are really engaged in discussions with the Transport East to really positively influence the strategy, connecting all the towns and the cities, energising the coastal strategy, and the communities, and unlocking the international situation as well. I think the four strategies, priorities, decarbonisation, gateways, play to the strengths and needs of the SELEP and Southend. But I think importantly, I cannot stress enough the energy that Councillor Kevin Bentley puts in, the leader of Essex County Council. He's so enthusiastic, he drives it, and the team that he's built with Andrew Summers and Esme and co are working extremely well, and they ought to be recommended or commended for what the work they've done. But yeah, I've got nothing but praise for Kevin and the way that he's driving this forward. Thank you.
Great. Okay, Ron, that's good to know. Jeff, is your hand up, Jeff Miles, or were you just voting? Jeff? I think he might have been voting. No, okay, so he's voting. So just go back then to, if there's no other comments or observations, I'd like your agreement then to that the board should make a formal response to the Transport East strategy consultation. Everyone happy to agree that? And then secondly, thank you. And then to agree to adopt, to delegate authority to Perry to approve the consultation response on behalf of the SELEP Strategic Board to be submitted by the end of January 22. Everyone happy to delegate authority to Perry? Great. Okay, that's good. Thank you. Then we'll move. So Esme, Perry and Leslie, thank you so much. That was a very informative, really good presentation. I think we're all up to speed now and all part your elbows. So let's move on then to the capital programme update, and I'll hand over to Helen Dyer to take us through this. Helen.
So this report provides an update on both the Local Growth Fund and Getting Building Fund capital programmes. I'm going to start on the Local Growth Fund. And as you are aware, the LGF programme officially ended on the 31st of March this year. However, the board have previously agreed a 6-month extension to the end of September. For those projects which are forecasting LGF spend beyond this date, additional approvals have been required from this board to ensure that you remain comfortable with the deliverability of and progress being made on those projects. So to date, the board has approved LGF spend beyond September on 25 projects, and there is one further project which is seeking approval at this meeting. Given that we're now well past the end of September, I don't anticipate there being any further requests for the board to consider, unless, of course, any further funding is returned to SELEP for reallocation through the pipeline. So the project seeking approval at this meeting is the Southend Central Area Action Plan project. This project is nearing completion, but has experienced supply chain delays as a result of impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic and Brexit. Construction was also delayed whilst work was undertaken to stabilise and fill major sinkhole. It is now expected that the project will complete this month. As set out in the report, there are currently 8 LGF projects which are still considered to be high risk, and these projects continue to be closely monitored by the Accountability Board. So moving on to the Getting Building Fund. As board are aware, the funding was designed to support economic recovery post-COVID-19, and government expectations were that the funding should be spent in full by the end of March 2022. However, some projects have encountered unexpected complications or delays during project delivery, which mean that the funding can no longer be spent by the end of March. In July, the Accountability Board agreed that, subject to the projects meeting certain conditions and criteria, that they could retain their GBF funding beyond March 2022 for a maximum period of 6 months. To date, this board has agreed GBF spend beyond March 2022 for 2 projects. At this meeting, the board are asked to consider requests from 5 further projects. Full details of the 5 projects are set out within the report, but I particularly wanted to pick up on the 2 Essex broadband projects. The Getting Building Fund was awarded to these projects to accelerate delivery of and extend the scope of the existing Superfast Essex programme. To enable this, a change request had to be submitted to BD UK, which is Broadband Delivery UK, which is part of the Department for Digital, Culture, Media and Sport. Due to an unrelated wider disagreement between BD UK and BT, who are the delivery partner, the change request was refused in March 2021. It took a further 6 months of work before BD UK would accept and finally approve the change request. As a result, delivery of the projects has been significantly delayed. Both the broadband projects have requested retention of their GBF funding for a further 12-month period to March 2023. Whilst this doesn't comply with the previously agreed conditions, the decision was made by Accountability Board to allow a 12-month extension as an exception due to delay being caused entirely by the actions of a central government department. The other 3 projects set out within the report, Jaywick Market and Commercial Space, Better Queensway and No Use Empty South Essex, are all seeking the maximum 6-month extension allowed in line with the conditions agreed by the Accountability Board. Any items are monitored by the Accountability Board, and appropriate steps are being taken to ensure the deliverability of the entire GBF programme. At this meeting, the board is asked to note that the Fast Track Business Solutions for Hastings Manufacturing Sector project has now been removed from the Getting Building Fund programme. This is due to the project being unable to mitigate the identified delivery risks as required prior to the November Accountability Board meeting. The 3.5 million Getting Building Fund funding allocation is in the process of being reallocated to alternative projects on the GBF project pipeline. Finally, I just wanted to highlight we've been receiving a lot of freedom of information requests regarding projects in East Sussex, which are being delivered by Sea Change Sussex. In addition, 2 public questions, both on Sea Change Sussex projects, were submitted for a response at the last Accountability Board meeting. We are responding to all requests in line with due process and will continue to do so, but I just wanted to take this opportunity to flag that these requests are being received. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions for or observations for Helen? I can see Sarah's hand is up.
Yeah, thanks, Chris, and thanks very much, Helen, for that outline. I mean, it will come as no surprise to you all that as Accountability Board Chair, I'm really concerned about ensuring that all delivery partners and the upper tier authorities that we directly contract are held to account and that they are absolutely delivering against their committed outputs and outcomes. So I do think it's really imperative that we ensure that, timely and complete updates are provided to the board, and also that officers really highlight where any targets are being missed. And it's really imperative that we ensure that proper and transparent oversight of the programme is ensured. So I want to continue to to kind of press for full and transparent updates. And I think, and I would recommend to this board that we continue to closely monitor it at SELEP Strategic Board as well as Accountability Board, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. So I see that Councillor Simmons and then Councillor Woodley's hands are raised. So Councillor Simmons, to you first, please.
Thank you very much, Chris. I think it would be sensible to advise colleagues that the Fast Track Solutions project in North Queensway, although having to return its funding, this is a critical project of huge importance to the area, and we will be doing our utmost to represent the business case, which is an outstanding one, back to the opportunity for further funding.
Thank you, Councillor Simmons. We'll look forward to that as and when it's ready. I have Councillor Woodley and then Perry Gladden.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to highlight on the Better Queensway. I know it says expected completion date January 2033. That is the whole building of 1,760 homes, the highway removement and thing. The 4.2, which is part of the GBF funding, that will be spent by early next year, 2022-23. It's the new energy hub that's going in there. It's not the whole building. So I just wanted to make that clear that it's not going to be that spend going to 20 or to 33. It is only the whole building scheme, of which the 4.2 on the GBF funding will be spent next year.
Thank you, Ron. I thought that was a typo, but you've clarified it, so thank you very much for that. Perry.
Can I just check on the A127 Fairglen? As I read it, we're still awaiting the Department of Transport for a sign off on the business case. Can you just confirm what we're doing to push them for a swift decision on this? Because I mean, clearly that's critical to the project, isn't it?
Yes, Adam or Suzanne, are you able to give any light on that for Perry?
Yeah, we are still waiting for the decision from the DFT. Helen might want to come in because she might have a little bit more information. We continue to push, and I'm sure that Essex County Council are also pushing for this key project to come forward. Was there anything else that you wanted to add, Helen?
No, I think that covers it. I know that we are regularly asking Essex County Council for updates, and they are regularly chasing, but a date hasn't been given at this stage.
Do we need to write a formal letter to the department to try and encourage them?
I think that's definitely something we can explore, and we'll speak with the officers at Essex County Council.
Okay, thank you.
On that point.
Good. All right. Any other questions or comments? No. I mean, Sarah's point is about accountability and oversight is a very important one, and something that we will. And we're having discussions. We intend to have discussions with a number of council leaders.
Well, not only frame them.
I think it was the lady in reception. Yes.
Okay, in that case, I'd like to move to just to make sure we get the formal agreements right. So the first item that I need to have your agreement to is that we agree that the LGF spend beyond 30th September 2021 for the South End Central Area Action Plan project.
Oh, we're getting it.
Expected completion December 2021. Can I have your agreement to that? Thank you. And then I need agreement on various getting building fund projects that spends beyond 31st March 2022 for the following 5 projects. The first one is the Jaywick Market and Commercial Space. The second one is the Better Queensway, expected completion, as Ron said, for our element next year or early 23. The third one is the No Use Empty South Essex, expected completion GBF spend September 22. The next one is the acceleration of the full fibre broadband deployment in very rural, very hard to reach areas, expected completion March 23. And the final one is the extension of the full fibre broadband rollout in Essex to reach rural and hard to reach areas, expected completion 23. So, okay, do you have agreement to those?
Great.
Thank you. And then finally, to note the cancellation of the fast track business solutions for the Hastings manufacturing sector project, but we're expecting, as Councillor Simmons said, we're expecting that to come back in due course. Is that correct? Yes.
Very much so.
Yeah, okay, great. So just to note that. Thank you for that. In that case, we'll move on to item 8, which is the SECEN Statement of Intent. I'm going to hand over to Sarah, who hopefully will bring the board up to speed on this, the good work that's being done by this group. So Sarah, over to you.
Thanks. Sorry, I saw Suzanne had her hand up.
Oh, sorry, Suzanne.
Was there something, Suzanne, you needed to say?
I was just going to, that's okay, just to say that for any business cases to come back to come forward again, there would have to be another call for projects to allow that to happen, which currently at the moment we haven't got. So there's not a process at the moment, but should a further call for projects be announced, then of course the business case could come forward at that point.
Okay, so that actually puts that in a slightly different light, doesn't it? Councillor Simmons, you'll have to have a chat with Suzanne as to what the procedures might be if you wish to bring back that particular project, because it does, and as Suzanne's making the point, we'll have to reopen the whole process.
The situation is properly understood. We do need to complete the process of planning permission before we then represent the business case to any future funding opportunity.
Okay, thank you. Good. Sarah, over to you.
Yes, thank you. Sorry, I just thought it was important to clarify that. So thank you. So I'm going to share some slides. Amy, thank you very much. So I just wanted to sort of talk you through the SECEN Statement of Intent document. So basically, as you may know, the South East Creative Economy Network is an open voluntary network, and it's a working group of the SELEP, and it was established in around 2012. And the idea behind it is about becoming a coherent voice for the 15,000 plus creative industries across East Sussex, Kent and Essex. And it's sector-led, so it's composed of a range of creative industry businesses, freelancers, education providers, strategic organisations and local authorities. And so the Statement of Intent document that the image of which you can see in front of you at the moment is an update of the successful prospectus. And that prospectus has actually been really important to the creative economy in the South East, and it's levered in excess of 10 million. And some examples of that, things like the South East Creatives Business Support Programme, which was funded through European money, and it was a real lifeline to creative businesses during the pandemic. And it also was part of kickstarting the ideas around the Thames Estuary Production Corridor, which has in fact led to around £4 million plus investment in creative estuary. So we were almost complete prior to the pandemic, but we've taken the decision to release the document now as a virtual document. And the idea behind that is to sort of help guide the sector through the upcoming opportunities, through the Prosperity Fund, through the Levelling Up. But we absolutely acknowledge that the impacts of COVID, as they become more apparent, that it will probably need to be reviewed, and that it will need to be an iterative process. Next slide, please. So as you probably have all heard me say again and again, the creative sector is one of the fastest growing sectors in the UK economy. Prior to the pandemic, worth around 16 billion GVA to the UK economy. And actually the reality of that is that that is greater than the automotive, aerospace, life sciences, oil and gas industries combined. So next slide too, but it's not just about the economy, it's also about the way that the industries play a real key role in the kind of wider agenda about placemaking, about wider social and well-being benefits. So what you see here on the slide here is the way that the creative economy and culture combine as a large ecosystem, which generates ideas, which generates creativity, innovation, and helps create great places to live, contributes to our well-being and contributes to the wealth of this country. So next slide, please. So I think the sector was really on the edge of huge success prior to the pandemic. And we are continuing to do that. But we have been really growing our reputation as a cutting edge place for creativity. And there have been a whole load of programs supported by the LEP in infrastructure developments like the Yasmin Vardaman Dance Company's new space in Ashford, Mercury Rising, and the research and evidence gathering that we've had along looking at the Thames Estuary production corridor opportunities. The reality is, though, that the pandemic, as I mentioned, has had a really uneven impact on the sector. There are around, I think, 96% of the creative workforce in the LEP area are freelance and micro businesses, and we're only just beginning to understand the opportunity that provides and the challenges. We know that micro clusters are growing, and we know that more people are looking to move out of cities for a rural and coastal lifestyle. But also there have been really important movements over the last while. We talked earlier about the importance of climate change and how that impacts on the ways that we work, but also movements like Black Lives Matter and the push for greater diversity in the workforce in the creative industries. So the statement of intent really looks to start to address the action we need to take with those principles in mind. And that we will absolutely be looking at how we can create really diverse, good, great growth communities in the South East region and really centre on environmental sustainability. So next slide, please. So it looks really at some key areas. So that's great places. So we outline our ambitions and commitment firstly to great places. We're absolutely committed to delivering a rich quality of life for our communities and looking at how we rejuvenate our town centres, our coastal towns, our high streets. The reality is that the pandemic, as I've said before, has been uneven. There have been boom times on, with creative tech, but other sectors such as theatre that rely on really bringing people together are really facing incredibly challenging times. So next slide, please. But I'm also a great believer of every dark cloud, there's a silver lining. So we know that there are masses of opportunity. We know that there are spaces like the Acacia site in Dartford, which is at the heart of the town centre, that could really be repurposed to deliver creative economy and social outcomes that will benefit Dartford's communities. And so we want to look, the statement of intent looks to how we can address those opportunities and that how we can be completely committed to creating great places. Next slide, please. I think as Councillor Wagland said earlier, data is absolutely key to all of this. So we will be data driven. And we want to bring together new research and new information that's previously not existed in one place. And actually, it's really interesting hearing earlier on from Transport East about the idea of the transport networks, because we know that actually if you can't get to a theatre, you're not going to go out at night. So that transport information is really, really key. That, that last mile information is really, really key. And we need to look at that alongside population growth that will really inform our planning. So one of the other things we also know is that creative industries, I mentioned the huge number of freelancers and micro businesses, and we need really easy access to fit for purpose workspaces that really enable those businesses to scale up and scale down in response to commissions and in response to productivity needs. And indeed also those workspaces need to be flexible and create that kind of serendipitous moment where you have the exchange of ideas over that cup of coffee from another business. So we need to look at all of that. So that the statement of intent again looks at that creative workspace opportunity. So just to move on to the next slide, we know that the creative sector thrives in clusters, and you'll see here some of the research that's been done nationally about clusters by Nesta. But what's important is to note is that through some of the micro clusters, actually the businesses can have the same economic impact in a micro cluster as they can as a large scale employer. So we need to look at how we can deliver interconnecting programs that really integrate the growth of those clusters. And we also know, and I hope the coastal group will only echo this, that some of our coastal areas have faced and continue to face really, really significant challenges. So we're interested in exploring how we can integrate more fully with the work happening there, and perhaps explore things such as the creative opportunity zones, and look at how we could develop some interesting ideas about that. And then talking of coastal communities, next slide please, tourism and cultural tourism is obviously really important. There's something like 139 million visitors to the southeast that spend about £8.9 billion, and the cultural sector is really key to that tourism offer. But we know that actually working together is going to be really important. That some research I undertook with Christchurch University demonstrated that a cultural tourist has a propensity to stay longer than other leisure tourists to an area, so potentially to spend more. So we want to work together across the southeast to create really great cultural experiences that offer a dynamic, shifting seasonal opportunity to the southeast. We know those shoulder months, those, you know, once the summer is past, those shoulder months are going to be really important, and the cultural sector can play a real role in extending our appeal. And great again to hear from Transport East and the importance of those transport links which support sustainable and accessible tourism. We will continue to advocate for that. Next slide, please. But all of this, of course, will be nothing without people. So it's really vital that we work with both the communities and the businesses and the people that drive that innovation. The Southeast has over 15,000 creative businesses and accounts for around 9.6% of total businesses in the LEP area. So we also know that we're offering an increasingly competitive offer to the location, to the capital, but we also know that there's growth for more. So one of the stats I always like to quote is the example of when we looked into the Thames Estuary Production Corridor opportunity, we knew that there are 100,000 creative workers living in the estuary area. But actually the reality is that 50,000 of those were working elsewhere. So we, you know, if that doesn't shout opportunity, I don't know what does. We know that the number of creative businesses introducing a new product is approximately 20% compared to only 9% in the non-creative sector firms, and that apparently the GVA contributed by the creative professional is almost double the average GVA contribution of an employee elsewhere across the Southeast's wider economy. So it's really important that we build on the successful Southeast Creatives programme that I mentioned earlier on, and continue to campaign together to get improved investment opportunities for businesses, including R&D and growth ambitions. So next slide, please. So we know the other thing is that about the skills gap, and I know it's something that I hear often as businesses talk more generally outside the creative sector, but the stark reality is that around 42% of our creative industry employers report a skills gap in the UK. So we need to really work with our young people, our schools, our FE, our HE providers to help change this, and to build a really strong relationship between the creative industries and the education providers for a really dynamic and localized and investment ready opportunities to develop innovation. So we're looking in the statement of intent to see how we can develop pilot schemes for modular and rotational apprenticeships that are much more manageable for micro businesses and to the freelance economy. And we're looking at how we can learn from other sectors, such as the construction industry modules. So the final slide is really just to say thank you, and to just sort of say that with the ongoing support of the LEP and authorities, I believe that the cultural sector can really spring back. It was, and all of the data at the moment is showing from the Creative Industries Federation that actually it is really springing back quickly, despite some of the challenges that COVID is still throwing at us. So I hope that the statement of intent really kind of demonstrates the breadth of our commitment, the breadth of our ambitions, and sets out a bit of a roadmap of how we believe we can continue to deliver really great places, really great businesses, and with and for the people and communities of the South East. So that's it from me. I hope that gives you a bit of a flavour. Thank you.
Sarah, thank you. I can't emphasize enough what an important sector this is for the South East. It is, it's a huge area of where we have some really talented businesses, companies, and some really great work is being done. So Sarah, thank you very much for that. It's really important. Anybody got any comments or observations on Sarah's presentation? Yes, I can see Councillor Wagland and then Liz Gibney. So Councillor Wagland, to you.
Thank you very much indeed, Chair. I just wanted to reinforce the placemaking point that was made by Sarah. I think it's often not fully understood, and I'm sure that won't escape anyone here, but I think it's really important just to crystallise it. For me, quite early on in my career, I sat on the property advisory group to the government, and Tom Bloxham came and joined us. And I remember saying to Tom, be great communities, not just good, but good. And Tom's line was always that you needed three things. The first one that you needed was good schools, which I've always hung on to, and which Essex is actually delivering. The second of which, though, was a sort of quarter, an area that a particular community makes its own, a little bit like the French version of that. But probably the least politically incorrect one would have been the Australian community in Earl's Court at one stage. But sort of thing that differentiated. But his third, and he used to say the biggest point, was a cultural facility or area that could be designated for creatives, in effect, Sarah's wording. I don't know that we ever bolt that into the equation quite as much as we should. And there are unbelievably wonderful examples in the UK where that has actually been achieved. And there are bad examples in the UK. The cultural piece has actually been provided, but the opportunity to regenerate around it hasn't happened, or has happened in a way which doesn't actually fit. And there are some in Essex where I'm fighting to make sure that they do. And I know Graham, who's on the call, Graham Butland, and I both have this view that, if you can use it to pump prime, we should be using it to pump prime, and we shouldn't take it as an excuse that it's cultural or creative, not to actually make it part of the overall community. And I just wanted to say that because I take any opportunity to do so, as Sarah knows well. So thanks very much indeed for that.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wagner. I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, just the areas that I know best, in Margate with the Turner Contemporary, in Folkestone what Roger DeHaan's been doing, Eastbourne with the Towner. I couldn't agree with you more. The cultural centres do have absolutely transformative effects. And,
the Laban in Greenwich, for example.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Ones that I think the hard-nosed property developers just don't often recognise that is a possibility. And I must admit, even I balked at that one, and the thesis that Tom gave proves right, I think, almost every time.
Yeah, thank you. So Liz Gibney.
Thanks, Chris. Just to echo what Councillor Wagham's just said, because we're doing a lot of work on this in the Coastal Communities Group, but really just to emphasise how very lucky we are to have Sarah as our Vice Chair, and amazing presentation. And I think, there's so much potential in the LEP for us to work on this and to build on this. And I think we're just so lucky to have you. So thank you very much, Sarah.
Thank you, Liz, very much endorse that. So while I'm asking if there are no other comments or observations, questions.
I just want to say, Chris, thank you very much to both of you. And if just to build on the point that Councillor Wagland was making earlier about from Tom, was actually we just commissioned some research which demonstrates that the impact of creative workspace on lands, on residential land value is actually really significant.
Yeah.
So if anyone needs some of that evidence, I'm very happy to provide it.
Great. Okay, thank you for that. So what I'm asking you to do is to endorse the statement of intent that Sarah has outlined. Can I have your endorsement to that, please? Thank you very much. Okay, we have exactly no minutes left, so we'll ask Adam to be very, very brief on the sector support fund project update. Adam.
Thanks very much, Chris. I will just keep it focused on, we're looking to endorse a change request for the Building Back Better project. So recommending the endorsement of an extension of the delivery programme from March 22 to February 23. Reasons for that: unavoidable resourcing issues at the outset of the project. A lot of support remains for it, not least from the social enterprise group, but also from East Sussex County Council and others. Project is scaled back a little, but remains true to its original aims of ensuring social enterprises receive a constant level of business support bespoke to their individual needs. The BCR, in accordance with what I've just said, is reduced from 4.97 to 1 to 3.65 to 1. On that basis, the ITE, though, has confirmed the project continues to offer good value for money.
Thank you, Adam. Any comments or observations for Adam? In that case, could I have your endorsement of the change request for the Building Back Better project as described by Adam? Thank you.
Agreed.
Thank you very much.
Agreed.
Is there any other business that anyone would like to raise? In which case, I will thank you. Oh, Karen. Yes, Karen.
Sorry, it's just a point to know. I've been invited to join the rural meeting for the South East Local Enterprise Partnership Rural Group meeting on the 12th of January. I just wanted to let our group know, because they're going to be talking about the National Food Strategy, so which is very, very important. And I think a real opportunity, particularly for the growing food sectors within the South East. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to taking part.
Great. Okay, Carol, thank you for that. If there's nothing, Jeff, is your hand up? Yeah, Jeff.
Just to say thank you and good night, as they say in my business. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jeff, for all you've done. And with on that note, I think we will close the meeting. Thank you very much.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Merry Christmas, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Chris.
Bye,
Thanks,
everybody.
everybody.
Merry Christmas.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Merry Christmas.